freedomslips.radio, or in fact now, freedomslips.com, where it's more than just radio. So jump in the chat room if you can. This is show number 421. 120 and 400, if you can believe that. 9 years on the air, 9th year in it right now, in the 9th year. And we're going to talk about the moon. We're going to finish talking about the moon. It's some craziness recently that the president signed into law, I guess, which we'll talk about. It's on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere, or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop Digital Radio, because it appears in the list of accessible stations. That's why we tell you about the Grace Tabletop Radio. That is freedomslips.com does. If you missed Lars' show, shame on you. I did miss Lars' show. And today I was walking out with my kids. We're in lockdown and we take the kids out every now and again. And today we did, and we just took them out now. So I missed it. My apologies, but you don't have to miss it. For $5 a month, you can access the Freedom Slips archives, and you can check out our shows, every host's show. Dave, do you know who the guest was by any chance?
I certainly do.
Tessa B. Dick, wife of the author Philip K. Dick. That would have been, oh man,
you missed
I can't believe I missed it.
Oh, I know, right?
What a kick in the teeth and the gut. I love Philip K. Dick. I read him I started reading him when I was 12. I didn't get most of the things when I was 12, so I reread them years later. In case you don't know, Minority Report, Total Recall, Do Droids Dream of Electric Sheep, which was then turned into Blade Runner. You should know that one. Philip K. Dick is a seminal author of the science fiction second golden age, I should say. Anywho, as part of our radio program, we're broadcasting from Australia, which is a continent that's real. And as such, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. For me, it is the Daruk people here where I live. And for Dave,
it's the Darkinjung.
Thank you very much. And we would like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. And it is not a gimmick. Those people have been here a lot longer than us. History did not start with Europe. I know.
That's funny. Oh, don't. Watch your mouth,
Maggie. What? Yeah, look, it's the truth. And every day, we're digging up more stuff that tells us, hey, guys, you don't know anything. Trust me. Look, we are in the, I want to say the 3rd or 4th week of lockdown. Fairly easy to do. And it's really easy the first 4 weeks. After week 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so forth, it gets difficult. I'll have you know. There's some psychological research that was done around it. Interesting to see it. And it's really on everybody to stay sane. Right? Do whatever you need to. Find a routine. Find a routine, because we are creatures of habit. Get up in the morning, brush your teeth, take shower, whatever you need to do, have a breakfast. Then if you're still working, then just do your work and find a routine in that. If not, then do something else. But make sure you've got a routine. The only thing that will keep us sane in this, and we are in the house arrest for all intents and purposes. That's what we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to find yourself a routine. Make it up yourself, or maybe get your partner, wife, boyfriend, husband, whatever it might be, to help you with that routine.
In some places, you might have all of those.
Yeah, hey, that'd be awesome, right? And just be safe, right? Be safe. Don't be fooled. Don't go out. I mean, the numbers, Dave, and we're going to spend the first hour obviously talking about the virus, and Dave has done an excellent job of putting together, a whole bunch of news topics for the first hour. And I will say this: it will probably bleed into the second hour, because we're pretty much finishing off the moon. We've got a couple more things to say. Mm-hmm. I wanted to mention to you all one more thing about mining on the moon. There's an article that came out. This is hot off the press, literally, a few days ago. Trump has he signed an executive order that calls for commercializing the solar system, including mining the moon. But we'll go into that in the second hour.
There's a ton of resource out there, Mackie.
There look, well, hey, there might even be alien tech. What? Shh, quiet.
Quiet.
Oh, good. Shut up now. Now the coronavirus, of course, has been with us now for a while, and it will be for the better part of this year, is my estimation. There are 1.78 million cases, recovered 404,000 people. We never hear about that. But 404,000 people have recovered from this. Right now, doesn't mean they can't get infected again. We don't know. The jury is out on that. There's evidence both ways, but if there's evidence for just even for one person getting reinfected, that sort of throws everything else into question.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So look, it's possible, it seems, but I think again, it depends on the person. 108,000 people have died. So 513,000 cases have an outcome. Sorry, my friend, go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. And that case fatality rate so far for the entire world, only using the deaths and recovered to do the totaling, is 21.2%.
Exactly. It's at 21. And you know what? I think that's where it's going to level out because...
It has in my graphs.
Yeah. Look, unless there's going to be a treatment, which people are actually working on,
mm-hmm.
but the treatment might be worse than the disease in many ways, or a vaccine, then the 21% I think is where we're going to sit once this is all said and done, because the sample group we have now, we've got 500,000 and some cases which had an outcome.
That's right.
So
that's good. That's a good amount.
It's a good amount. It's a significant sample size to see where you're going with this. Now, yes, a couple of countries have really skewed that. Specifically, well, yeah, absolutely. UK, Italy, Spain, France, even, right? So these four countries have really had a really bad time of it. I mean, my heart really goes out to people, especially in New York. I thought Italy was bad. I mean, New York must be horrendous. They're not mass graves being dug for people that are either indigent, so they can't afford a funeral for themselves,
or they have no other next of kin or family contact.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's the same place they've done this all the time. Should someone die in care, it's not a brand new site for digging it up. And at one point in the future, someone, say 1,000 years from now, who won't have known this civilization, may very well come across these mass graves and just be astounded.
Interestingly, it is the inmates from Rikers Island that dig the graves, but there were so many now that they had to bring in professional contractors. There's one ray of sunshine, or a couple, I should say, and I want to highlight them because, well, look, first of all, I don't trust the Chinese numbers, so I'm not going to mention those. I mean, if they're true, awesome. Things are getting under control in China. That's really great if the numbers are right.
They're still on a slowing increase, but yeah.
Yeah. But the death rate is way down, and the active cases, there's only like 1,000 active cases. But Germany had 125,000 infections, 57,000 have recovered. That means there are 65,000 active cases. And based on 125,000, 2,800 people have died. Now, that's a lot of people. But France, who has got 129,000 cases, right, altogether, had 6 times the amount of people die, 13,000. Italy, who's got 150,000 now, cases, had almost 20,000 people. So Germany, almost 10 times the amount of the German case fatalities. So Germany is doing something right. Even the UK at 78,000 cases is scratching 10,000 fatalities, which is pretty bad.
That's 94% case fatality rate at the moment.
Yeah,
Germany's 4.8 and Australia is sitting at 3.1.
Yeah, correct. So Australia has done, considering when it started here, and most of our cases have been imported. There have been only a couple of community infections, which is great, considering all the numbnuts that went to Bondi and such. Yeah, so sorry, there's only one way to
says that affectionately.
I know.
And all the ones that have come in also have been cruise ships and the like. We're due for another 600 to join our shores.
Yes,
being repatriated from a cruise ship as well. So,
and I think we're flying people in from Nepal or somewhere.
Yeah, we are. We're trying to bring our people home.
Yeah, well, it's the right thing to do, because I mean, when we get them here, we can at least be assured that they get the proper care that Australia can provide. I mean, I'm sure other countries have great healthcare systems, but I think in Australia
there's no disputing the healthcare around the world.
Yeah.
Ours seem to be doing a reasonably good job with the virus. We might be lucky enough to have more S than L type, and I heard there's an H type as well that's just being discovered. So, look, it's... I hope that the UK hasn't got the H type, or, a strain that is not as treatable. But I do hesitate, Meki, to say this, but I believe the USA case fatality rates may go up.
Well,
You know.
I listened to this British doctor, and it was on the news, and they were just interviewing him. Like he was probably on his phone or something. I don't know,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
The point is, so there. I mean, obviously, Boris Johnson was in intensive care, precautionary. He seems to be getting better, which is good for him. But the doctor said, look, of the people we have in intensive care, he expects 50% not to make it. That's what this guy said, right? So this is not people that can't get treatment. This is people that have the treatment in ICU with the ventilators and the drugs, and he says 50% will not make it. And this is really something we need to just very quickly throw in here. And then I really want to get into the news because Dave did a great job of compiling it all. So this virus, let's just examine it for a second. Yes, it belongs to the family of coronaviruses. It is not a flu virus. Please. Okay, this is not an infomercial. This is research that's come from doctors and others, but this virus has as much in common with the flu virus as an elephant has with a pancake. Okay, this virus. So what normally happens, the flu creates a lot of fluid in your lung, which can lead to other things. But it really fills your your lungs with fluid. This virus does not. The secondary response of your immune system does. The pleura that forms is your immune system. That's what fills your lungs with fluid, not the virus. It's your immune system's reaction to the virus. What this virus seems to do, and by the way, the scientists are still learning on this, right? What this seems to do, it somehow inhibits your blood's ability to absorb oxygen in the lungs. So your blood cycles through your system. You know this. Your heart pumps it through, and all the used up blood goes into the heart, and then it's re-oxygenated in your lungs. So it passes through the lungs and is pumped out back into your body, filled with all the goodness of oxygen. But what this virus seems to do, it seems to block that ability. And one thing that really I found quite disturbing was that the doctor said some people come into the into the emergency room blue. So essentially when you turn blue, that indicates a lack of oxygen, and they didn't even know they were dying. They were blue, but they had no idea, because it is not. It's not so much. I mean, they had difficulty breathing. They didn't realize just how little oxygen was getting into their body. Right?
Surprised and shocked, maybe, would be the words that doctors used, that they were able to get themselves to the waiting rooms.
Yeah. So so I don't know if you remember this, and I don't know if it's verified, but I know we heard it a couple of times when this first happened in China. People would just drop dead in the street. So this would be why, if this is the case, if this is the virus, if this was it does. I mean, if you just let me put it this way: if there's a volcanic eruption somewhere and there's a whole bunch of methane gas, or not methane, another gas that is related to a volcanic eruption, because methane smells, but something that doesn't have an odor, and there are many gases that don't have odors.
Carbon dioxide.
That's it. Perfect. So it's released, right? And let's say you're camping near a volcano or whatever. You're camping there, and so overnight, the carbon dioxide, which now displaces all the normal atmosphere around you, has killed you without you ever knowing.
That's right.
Because
you just go to sleep and you don't wake up.
You don't wake up, right? That's it. And this is sort of like it, not the same, obviously, but sort of like it. And that is what is really terrifying in many ways. It's just we're learning about this virus. Okay, don't think of this as a flu. It ain't a flu. It's not a flu. Okay.
Cool.
Let's go into the news, man.
Yeah, no dramas at all. Okay, so to start with, I've been able to grab a whole bunch of different news stories. Okay, to support as well. I'll go through each one of these and just present them on the screen while we're talking about them. The first thing that I had to mention, which you've already said, Meki, and that is about the reinfection rates. The proof is going both directions. One is they're saying that a person can present with the virus again. They don't know how yet, and they're still doing tests on whether they were continually infected by the virus and that the test kits didn't show that they had it, or showed a negative when it became positive again. So whether it's a false negative, not a false positive, and then comes up as a positive later, or that they became reinfected again, or that that you only have a certain amount of period after becoming infected and recover where after the recovery where you are able to resist the virus naturally, and that your body might forget it, where you can become reinfected after a certain amount of time. This is what Meki was talking about earlier. There is just some gaps in the knowledge. A couple of points here and there show different versions of the same thing they're looking at, but they don't quite understand how it works yet. All right, so to start off, I want to premise this with the rhetoric that's currently going on, and this will become obvious. Ethiopia's former health minister, the Tedros Adhanom, he's stating that the virus should not be politicized. We're seeing this in the media. And it could be that he would prefer it wasn't, due to the historically visible misconduct of China and the World Health Organization. China, for concealing the virus and preventing word about it escaping the government's control, and the WHO governance of the virus information, which was too slow and not informative enough to allow countries to close their borders. That's the story that's currently out there, and what it appears in the media that he's defending. Look, to add to this, it appears that Tedros was anointed by China due to the ties with Ethiopia and China providing billions in aid, development and loans to Ethiopia, like it is a settlement of China. That's how much money they're pouring into it. So while he was health minister and he became, it appears, anointed into this role in WHO, is it possible that he is attempting to deflect the accusations from around the world of the incompetence of, and what appears to be an underwriting of control by China on the WHO? That's a good question. Is that what this is all about? Is he just trying to deflect that China is truly in control? Now, I say that because of this. Did the partnership allow for the underreporting of China's casualties? Because remember, we heard about the WHO going into China and doing some control measures, but those control measures and that time frame appeared to show suddenly a complete pause and stop in the China escalation of the virus. They changed their testing method 6 times until it resulted to nothing. And we've had citizen reporting coming out of China saying that people are dying left, right and centre, but the numbers aren't going up. And people are still today, Meki, over the last week, being removed from their houses with hazmat suits, covered on gurneys, getting wheeled down the street. The numbers aren't rising. Did this partnership see the closing of China's internal borders, but ignore what should have been the prevention of external travel out of China, and hence the subsequent dispersion of the virus to every country on the planet? Is that what this partnership did? Did it put blinkers over the WHO to prevent them from doing this in a timely manner?
I think it's bigger than that, actually.
I think so too. Well, the USA has its sights on revealing all of this and more to the world as it comes to light. So you yourself, you should look at the timeline.
So look at it this way, though, as well, right? And some of the countries' responses are telling here. And I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to take you on a journey very quickly.
I got my hot chocolate. I'm ready.
I know. South Korea, Taiwan, and Singapore were very, and Hong Kong, in fact, were very quick in closing their borders to mainland China. Mm-hmm. I mean, boom! It's like a
Taiwan knew all about it. Yeah.
Bang! It came down like the proverbial Iron Curtain. I mean, no ifs and buts. Done. All travel stops. Thank you very much. And at the same time, especially Singapore, rolled into effect. It didn't invent anything. It already had this patient tracking system and all that wonderful stuff, detective work. So they did a really good job. Okay, so
that
there
was
we
from
go.
the last SARS outbreak.
Yeah.
2 years
New Zealand, same thing. New Zealand went along. I said, I'm going to shut down They caught a bit of flack for that as well. Australia followed pretty soon after that. To our credit, we closed our borders, especially
except for repatriating our citizens.
But nobody did. Nobody said you can't repatriate. That's the one
right.
flaw right here.
Mm-hmm.
But again, as a citizen, you've got certain rights, and we're not quite at the point where those rights don't mean anything. But other countries took it a lot more, were a lot more complacent in this, and it might have been a lack of information. In my opinion, though, this is where the story I'm going to take you down this is again. In some ways, and this is the tinfoil hat zone, and you got to hear it from me, otherwise, you may not. This may be a deliberate effort to deal with a number of problems that the first world is facing. Okay, the first world is facing a huge problem with its aging population, right? And now with this particular virus on the loose, that problem is shrinking, believe it or not, in a horrific way, but it's shrinking. And if you say to me, "Oh, Maggie, that's just crazy. People would never do that kind of thing." Well, I'll just look at history. Come on, seriously? You don't actually believe that? No, actually, I won't say it. No, but just think of 10/12 and what happened in October, right? And if you get my meaning, but people are willing to sacrifice other people for gain, for political gain. We go to war all the time. But do I get anything out of it, or Dave, or any of our listeners, for that matter? Most of you wouldn't get anything going to war. You get nothing from it. But the big money people do. For example, I mean, there are many other beneficiaries here as well, and many other plot lines are thickening, and many other agendas are being fulfilled with all these things. A lot of problems are being solved right now for the hidden elite. Just be clear on that. So I mean, think about this. I mean, they bombed Iraq back to the Stone Age. Well, not quite, but it cost hundreds of billions to rebuild it. And where do you think those contracts went, right? People, yeah, of course, people made a lot of money on this stuff, right? So let's be very clear that people are being sent into harm's way all the time by people who themselves do not go into harm's way.
That's right.
Okay, so that is the story is, right? Certain countries, they may not have been read in, or they said, no, I'm not going to go with this, or they're not part of the overall plan, because who cares about Australia, Singapore, really, or even South Korea? Who cares? Whereas, big players like Russia, India, China, the US, of course, right? And in fact, India is one thing that terrifies me, because I heard there has been an outbreak in Mumbai.
Absolutely.
In the slum area. And that's when that happens, because those people, there's no social distancing, right? Let's just be very clear.
Mickey, dominoes.
So 100%. So a lot of problems are being solved here for the hidden elite and for the ruling elite that you know about, right? I mean, you get rid of old people, sweet, tick. You get rid of the indigent, the poor, the homeless, right? In one fell swoop. Not all of them, but certainly quite a few, right? So, yeah, well, hey, look, what can I say, right? But sorry. That's the story I want to take you on the journey. I don't think it's a nation state against a nation state. I think it's much bigger than this. You know what I mean? And I think, yes, will the truth come out one day? Well, I don't think so. Not necessarily. Maybe it will, but probably not. Not the real truth. There'll be some truth.
But the winner will write the narrative, Mackie, if you know what I'm saying.
Of course, absolutely. But let's keep going.
All right, so it looks like China paid their way into the naming of the virus from nCoV 2019, as we all remember it started, to SARS-CoV-2. And the disease is named COVID-19. Don't let people keep telling you COVID-19 is the virus. It isn't. Sorry. Rather that it have named something like Ebola after the river, or where it was first identified, or Zika virus after the forest where it was found to originate, or, as we mentioned before, the German measles in the past. This virus may very well be known in the future as the CCP virus or China flu, if the US has its way.
Yeah.
I say this because of a concerted effort has begun in the media of both sides to counter each other and have the loudest voice. This could lead to further rhetoric from each side and escalate, as we have said over and over again. I liken this to the early stages of a conflict evident in World War II. We started with trade wars, Maggie. There was rhetoric on both sides, and then and it escalated. Now we're seeing obviously different conditions otherwise, but there's something else that I've found that is a bit concerning. All right, so Beijing is saying that the Wuhan coronavirus. It said, Beijing objects to the naming Wuhan coronavirus, and it says it may not have originated in China. That was their first thing that they said. They said, "Oh, no, it's probably not us. We didn't make it. It wasn't us. It surely came from the US. So don't call it the China virus or the Wuhan virus." And that's what I'm saying. They paid their way into, it appears, into the WHO, and they avoided the naming of the virus as a result of that single question. Extraordinary. As we know, the other things that have come out in the media there is that the coronavirus may have been leaked from a Chinese lab. That news story is out there. That was out in February 23. Okay, so I think what is sad is that I found out this week that China purchased the world's stock of supplies of masks, medical equipment. There was 56 million respirators, Mickey, and food, and baby formula like milk powder and other things like that, and had it shipped home as the virus took hold, and they began their lockdown in China. So then China put out their hand and requested further assistance from the world, despite making 550 million masks per month itself, because they put themselves on lockdown and they couldn't produce those masks any longer. So the international community donated goods to China, to satisfy their needs, exhausting the world of its supplies. Now, the international community has run out of masks and medical equipment, and China is only willing to sell the same back to the international community. For example, Italy was forced by China to buy back the masks it donated to them. That's crazy. On the screen, Mickey, I've got this news story with 56 million respirators, for instance. Well, where am I? Here we go. Okay, so Italy has vowed to become self-sufficient in mask production within 2 months. That's what they're saying now. Also, substandard mask donations hamper China virus response. So this is another country. This is the ABS-CBN News, and they're calling it the China virus. So not everyone's on board trying with the naming conventions. And what they were saying in the story was that the masks have come in differing qualities. Some were already contaminated, and there were words that the masks were already contaminated with the virus that came from China, and others were saying they were just subpar construction. So China did donate masks back to other Asian countries, but not to the West, which has been viewed by some as an example of their xenophobic attitude. And I see it to assist countries to save face and possibly bring under their wing at a later date. And it isn't difficult. Sorry, it is difficult to forget when someone's provided you aid. So that might be like a team building exercise, if you hear what I'm saying. It disturbs me to talk about it, because I didn't know the world was like this right now. Maybe it was my blinkers too. So pity though that their test kits were subpar as well. For example, those sold to Spain by China were only 30% successful in testing the virus. 30%. I mean, that's so awful. How are you supposed to, protect yourself against the virus if it's so low? And the mask they sold to Italy was shown to already be contaminated with the virus. These findings have provided the world with a sobering thought that the goods we sought China to produce were usually subpar, very low cost, and this bad experience was thought true of manufacturing globally, or at least we were all conditioned not to look for alternatives to China. I think, this is me again, I think this is changing so fast that China will not continue their dominance in the market and will lose much of its manufacturing back to a group of trustworthy, reliable, and mutually partnered countries where the world could lose one or more but still be able to continue as normal. This approach is equivalent to business continuity planning, the BCP, that companies do all the time, especially with computers and access to their resources and supply chains. Normally, in normal conditions, this is the amount of planning they put in place. But China employs, and this is, you might not know this, employs astroturfing teams to promote their Chinese Communist Party ideals on China's social media. And if Meki, I'm sure you already know, because we've already discussed this, but astroturfing is the media term for owning the conversation, being able to provide Googled answers to relevant questions regarding topics of interest with enough certainty that looking for, say, for an example, a made-up example here, you would find information regarding sleeplessness in the USA is an epidemic. It's in epidemic proportions and it scares you. So you start looking around for it, but you'd find fake peer-reviewed, paid-for papers written by paid-for doctors. Opposing views will be labeled as misinformation, and you will find that sleeplessness has a cure. A new medicine, even, about to be launched. Just ask your doctor. That's an example of astroturfing. So they'll blanket over everything entirely, everywhere you could possibly look. You think you've done your due diligence in trying to research something, but only to hit on everything that they've planned in advance for you to make your mind up and have what you think is an educated opinion, but in fact it's entirely their narrative and it leads you to their solution.
Yeah.
So that right now is occurring. I know it's occurring in every one of our countries, but especially it's currently occurring in China to try and lift the people's negative impression of the government. So firstly, saying it's the US virus, hey, it wasn't us. We didn't do it. It was them. Common enemy. Meki, how powerful is a common enemy?
Oh, of course. I mean, that's the only thing that will galvanize all the troops around the one common goal, a common enemy. I mean, you can fight amongst yourself as much as you like. If you've got a common enemy, beautiful, right? I mean, that's why we thought disclosure would bring the Earth together closer to one world government. Maybe it's this, in the long term, that will galvanize us around that particular, goal. But yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely. Nothing quite like it.
Great answer. So I wanted to just let you know, since Meki and I, we know we're here, we're in lockdown. This is not a self-imposed lockdown. It's the closest to lockdown you'll have without martial law lockdown. That's what it is. It's the closest we could possibly be to that. And I've got some funny points here. So in Australia, it is illegal to leave your house without a government-approved reason, such as, medical, legal, you're seeking goods or services, for instance. Exercise on the list as well. You're allowed to move house. You're allowed to donate blood. You're allowed to access unemployment services, mental health services, and things like that. And you're allowed to take your child to school or daycare. You're allowed to go to a place of worship for whatever that matter is. And if you feel unsafe in your house, you're allowed to leave to avoid injury or illness. They're the reasons why you can leave. But you can't do that in groups of larger than 2 unless you live together. You can't congregate anywhere at all in the entire country if you are doing it in a group of more than 3 or more than 2. So you can't do it with 3. They've employed our cell phone tracking to triangulate people who are doing it. People have left their houses to meet somewhere. They've just issued $1,000 fines to each participant in a closed door car meetup. So people on Facebook said, hey, let's go and meet at this place. And you go, yeah, cool, the usual place. And they drove there, and the police issued them all fines. They didn't even get out of their cars. They didn't actually congregate, and there was still enough distance apart. However, that's illegal. What else is illegal? You're not allowed to protest anymore. That became illegal this last
no, you
week.
can protest. You can in groups of one. you can.
That's just mutter on a soapbox.
Yes.
That's me. I'm allowed to do that still. Hey, that's good. All right. But they've actually said you're not allowed to protest any longer. Now it's illegal. They've had these little groups of people writing laws during the night, and suddenly it's enforced. And the best guidelines we have are on the ABC News sites. You're not allowed to drive your car and return without getting out of it. You can't drive around a loop around. That's what I was using for solace. I like driving. Now I have to go to the shop and buy a loaf of bread and then come home again. I can't just drive near to the store and come back. What? That's so parks, bars and clubs are all closed. The park Mecca is a park 180 meters from my house. 180 meters. I took the dogs for a walk, and I took the kids, begrudgingly. They refused every minute of every step of going there. I get there, and there's a park swing. Now, it used to be like a rocket climbing thing. You could climb inside this thing, right? But that's turned totally into just a 2-swing set. And the swings are now cable tied to the post, and there's a sign saying, according to this is closed, according to the federal government rules of parks being closed. It was 2 swings. They didn't even leave one swing.
In fact, all I live in a non-gated gated community, if you want to put it that way, right? And we've got quite nice parklands around us. A lot of children's, activities. Like little swings and this and that. The basketball courts. It's really quite cool. All of it completely shut down, locked. You cannot go there. You'll get fined if you do. And I guess
you can't play singles tennis with someone.
We've got tennis courts as well. No tennis, nothing. Can't do it. No, can't. It's all the. You can try, but for the most part, it's just not accessible, right? So, what does that mean? Well, what it means is you're really between a rock and a hard place, right? There's not a lot we can do anymore. You can go outside and walk for a bit, but you can't be walking around too many people. So I usually walk early in the morning, right? I work like 6-7 o'clock. That's when I start walking. I take my kids out in the afternoon for an hour or so, scootering, and a few people do it as well here and there. But yeah, other than that, you don't see anyone, and it's quite harsh. Now I understand that my sister-in-law, she works for Nielsen Media, right, in Macquarie Park, and she understands that a couple of her colleagues have been pulled over and have been fined in this last week for traveling essentially. But I think they were traveling to work, but still, nope, not good enough. You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to go.
You have to work for a declared essential service.
Yeah. Exactly. Now, luckily, both Dave and I, we work for a company that's considered that. So I can still go. Dave can still go if he has to. So all we have to do is, we have to wear our little name tags thingy, lanyard, and we're okay. I can even go to the city because we've got an office in the city, albeit it's retired.
Wouldn't.
No. The thing is, there's nobody in the city. It's probably the safest place to be if you want to be anywhere, right?
Yeah, that's true. Our train station, a local train station, which you can't park anywhere near the place, usually on a weekday, only had 6 cars in it. 6 cars. It's usually so packed. You can't. It's just better walking there from home. Crazy. I wouldn't put myself at risk and sit on the train for 2 hours.
That's silly. That's just complete silliness.
Crazy. And why these people are doing it, I don't know. They must be dressed in hazmat suits or something. I can't imagine how you go away with it. Mackie, one thing, it's not illegal. It's not illegal to visit a business that's open. That's been determined.
No, correct. No. Sorry, I just processed that. You're 100% correct.
So
it is not.
Yeah. So it's not illegal because there was a fellow this week that washed his car at 1:19 a.m. by himself and his dog at one of those washing stations where there's 4 or 5 bays, and he's washed the car, and the police drove past and saw him there and decided to give him, I think it was like a $1,200 fine or something. Yeah.
It's hefty. It hurts. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the auto wash costs you auto wash. Little Dallas multipass. Auto wash.
multipass.
Yes, he knows it's a multipass. So that was really terrible. They drove past and decided to fine him, and he said, "Look, this is crazy. I'm an essential. I'm a driver. I take goods to the Woolies shopping centre during the day, and it's the only time I've got." And it was determined that if the business was open, you're allowed to visit it, and they withdrew that fine, which was really interesting to see. But there was a social media backlash, like that L-plater who was getting education. That
was just nuts. I mean, seriously.
I know, right? What a great advantage to be able to have an L-plater on the freeway with no traffic, not getting scared. Absolutely. Right? What a great thing. I know. But I have to laugh. Mickey, there's been a lot of memes, and I'm just going to throw some memes of the week up while I'm chatting about this. And they're hairdressers. They did a backflip on it. They said you can't be at the hairdressers for half an hour. You're allowed to go and get your hair cut, but it can't be half an hour or more. And that sounds like a very male durationed experience at the hairdressers. Not a female, not the feminine side of the society. 50% of the society would say, I spend like 2 or 3 hours at the hairdressers. I get the head washed and massaged, and it's it's blow dried, then it's cut, and then it's styled or coloured. It takes hours, and so they backflipped, and the hairdressers have stayed open. And my guess was it's the politicians' wives that probably forced the rule. And I joke about this, Mickey, because the few memes that came up this week showed like Neanderthal-looking creatures exiting and walking down the street and looking sort of scared and confused, and that the meme said that this is us after lockdown. I thought that was really funny. That sort of went up my flagpole, and I had to address that one. But the other thing, Mickey, which I thought was really funny, is like our government shuts down for Easter and doesn't come back till August. Unless emergency is accepted.
Unless they've got to vote some more laws into more positions in the law, and they're sitting with a very reduced bench anyway. So a lot of members of Parliament and members of the Senate are not in Canberra, which is our capital city for everybody that might not be aware of this. And it's sort of like a remote session, but there are very few people in actual physical attendance. And there are some, and there are extraordinary sessions being called in case certain laws need to be passed, or certain things need to come into effect, or whatever it might be. So however the situation evolves, essentially. Now, just on that though, right? So I think we should all just be very clear for the next 2 years. I want to say until the end of 2021. I don't think international travel is pretty much off the cards. Australia, and I mean this, my hotel chains that I go to, or even the airlines I go to, I'm a member of, they've already told me that my memberships have been extended without loss of status for at least another 1 or 2 years, depending on whom I'm talking to. Yeah, absolutely. They've already. They don't want to lose business. I mean, the thing is, we might come out of this, and half those people might no longer exist.
Yeah, that's true.
So we'll see what happens. But whereas in Australia, again, I don't want to jinx it. So I'm going to touch wood here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But looking at our curve and our response and what I see in the street when I do go out, I think most Australians are pretty commonsensical. They're doing the right thing. We have got 80 serious cases right now in ICU. We've got 3,200 people that have recovered. We have just shy of 60 people that passed away. And altogether, we've got another about 3,000 active cases. So we are, and we've actually conducted 351,000 tests now. Now, having said all that, compared, like I said, to other countries, our lines are pretty good. Our numbers are pretty good with a view to this particular outbreak. And I think we've got a good handle on it, right? Similar to New Zealand. But internationally, I don't think we'll see the end of this until the end of 2021, because other countries that haven't joined the 1,000 club yet, and there's scores of those.
Yeah. And they're all climbing. They'll get there.
That's the thing, except for Greenland. Had 11 cases and 11 people are better, so Greenland is green.
Yeah, they're green. Enough. That's right.
Now, but having said all of that, right? So Yemen is from Yemen up to it's probably 100 countries here before you hit 100. Monaco, Aruba, Mali, they all have less than 100 cases, right? Jamaica, Barbados. Those might climb, right? And they've just started, I guess, in their infection curve. What might come to the aid is a cure, because people are working on a cure and a vaccine, right? Both, so that might help them. But unless we find that, right, really find it, I don't think we're going to be rid of this in any hurry. So our borders will remain closed. Our state borders probably will become open, in my opinion, October, November timeframe, depending on how things are going. Because right now we are not actually allowed to travel between states in Australia, right?
That's right.
I can't go from Sydney to Melbourne. Melbourneites can't fly to Perth, and so on and so forth.
Worst Easter holidays ever.
Correct. Now, my team. This is interesting because it's true. And some of the people that work in my team are providing IT support for critical infrastructure for Australia. They can travel, but only if they get permission from the government to do so. So that's one tick. There's another one, a statutory declaration which says that we're not forcing them to go, and they're willing and able to do it. They're healthy. And there's a third letter, and I can't remember. That's around the criticality of the actual work, which has to come probably from the state entity. So you need 3 pieces of documentation before you're allowed to travel. But it has to be in aid of critical infrastructure.
Do you have your documents with you?
Yeah.
So Ricky, everyone in the 50 club, not those below 50, but everyone in the 50 club between there and 100 are all exactly in unison in rise. And they're all that exponential line going at like maybe 70 or 80 degrees upwards. Yeah. Just saying, right?
Well, if it is true, though, I'm hoping for the outcome of Germany and Australia for most people, right?
Yeah.
But if every other country will have the outcome of the US, Spain, Italy, and France, the fatality rate, I don't think the rate will. I think it will level out at about 20-21%. That's what I believe happen unless
it has already flattened. So it started up in the 70%.
Yeah.
It went from maybe 45 to 70, and then dropped all the way down to just about maybe 8 or 9%, and it's climbed up to a steady curve and curved out at about 20%.
There's only one issue with that, right? So we're dealing here with countries, and look, you can say what you want about the US health service. It's not awesome, but it's not horrific. Spain, Italy, France, they all, UK, certainly, they're all meant to have pretty good national health systems, right? And their fatality rate is around the 20-21% mark. Now, if you have this thing happening, and once it starts, going viral in India, Africa, in a way, right? This is too soon. Then I fear, right? Because those numbers could very well be horrendous in India. And the one thing that worries me really a lot is India. I mean, for India, not so much for us because it's a lockdown and all that, so we're not really that affected. But just I've been to India a number of times, right? You love it or hate it, but there are people there, right? And some of those people just live in really substandard conditions, and I'm not sure they have any access to healthcare.
So India is the highest in the 1,000 club and climbing like the US.
Yeah.
So once it gets to 10,000, which should be in the middle of maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm seeing that it's going to hit the 10,000 club and just keep rocketing. It's going to skyrocket like the US. And the US hasn't curved off. Australia has slightly curved off, but it's still going up at about 100 a day. That's from 400 is pretty good, but the plateau is reasonable. You want to be able to. This flattening the curve thing still means everyone gets it. It just means that they're able to cope with it medically. I think that's the thing.
Yeah. Look, honestly, I don't think everyone is going to get it. To be honest with you, I don't think that's going to happen. I think in Australia, maybe I don't even think a significant percentage of the population will get it that we know of. So, because you might get it and never display symptoms, you might be completely asymptomatic.
That's
it might
true.
be infectious.
I think
right?
we'll have to undergo testing to see whether we had it.
Yeah.
Because we'll have to get these green cards, Mickey. That's what's good. We're going to need clearance at some point.
Well, we have tested 350,000 people in Australia, right? We've tested 350,000.
That's how many tests were done.
Yeah, correct.
Not the amount of people. So health workers get tested very, very regularly.
Oh yeah, of course. Mm-hmm. But we only have 6,000 infections. In fact, active only just under 3,000.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know. If we stay smart, we'll be okay. Can't really speak, for anyone else at all. But I look at these numbers regularly as they're updated. For some countries, America just came out of. That's just like a steamroller, dude. If you look at it, it's the way it happened.
Oh yeah, I know, it's crazy. So look, I know there's no more minutes left before the break. So I only just had some questions now. We don't have to address them now, but my guess we're going to see the removal of more rights because we've seen those disappearing, and whether we get them back again at the end, or whether the world outside of this tunnel when we emerge to the other side is going to be different from today. It probably will be. That's my guess.
It happened.
Oh yeah, I know.
Don't forget to donate. It's just not fun to the radio, and click on through our sponsors. I guess the people that sponsor the radio station. There's some interesting products for you probably if you like them. And I think that's it, right?
Yeah, that's the music. We'll see you after a short break, guys. Take care. You're back with Dave and Meckie's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com on the #1 listener supported talk radio on the net. So push the donate button or subscribe to the archives for only $5 a month. Welcome aboard if you're a new listener. We're glad you're on board. And so whether you follow, subscribe, or otherwise, do the like, thing, whatever it is, on the appropriate platform. And we're halfway through show number 421. 120
and 400.
Woo. You need to get yourself some merchandise from the station's website too. Maybe the possibility of an EMP-proof thumb drive with survival documents, seed packs, and a whole bunch of really cool things. So do that. Otherwise, subscribe to the archives. That's much better. If you're new to Shiny Side Out, welcome aboard. This is the Tinfoil Hat Zone. Also, keep your arms within the vehicle. Turn off your personal reality inverters, and please no flash photography. All the warnings are out, Mickey. We're good to proceed.
Okay, good. Look, just to cap it off, just be safe, right? The first hour we talked about it. The second hour now we're going to spend on the moon. There are a couple of articles we're going to share with you. One is part of the show notes, Dave. The other one I'll... Actually, I think there's a couple of articles. Sorry, there are two articles. There's one around mining, and the other one is around the actual composition of the moon, etc. At the creation as well, question by chemistry. Mm-hmm. But I just want to do a quick recap. Why are we talking about the moon before we go to the articles? Because we've got an hour and we'll be done with the articles fairly swiftly, I should think. We're talking about the moon because the moon is an extremely anomalous object in the solar system, and as far as we know, all the solar systems that we've so far seen. There's no other dynamic as it exists between the moon, the Earth, and the Sun in the solar system. Not a single other one is like this. It's just a very strange triangle of planetary bodies that you have there, or suns of it just doesn't make any sense. So many coincidences, things are just so. They're just so. I mean, the moon completely blocks out the sun. It can only do that because it is the apparent relative same size as the sun as observed from the Earth.
It is distant.
Correct. So the moon is 400 times smaller than the sun as a surface disk, but also 400 times closer to the Earth. So that's why we get perfect eclipses. You wouldn't get them otherwise. Nobody else does. There's no other planet that gets perfect eclipses like that. No other moon system works like this. It's really, really strange. There are many other strange things about the moon as well, which we shared with you. There's a really good book, Who Built the Moon? I recommend it if you want to read it. It's by Christopher Knight and Alan Butler. They wrote Civilization 1. Well, Alan Butler did, and Christopher Knight wrote The Hiram Cave, if that's any indication for you, if you have read it or not, I don't know. And read it. It's really, really interesting. I mean, is the moon hollow? Well, I don't think it's completely hollow like a Dyson sphere. I don't think it's that. I mean, there are massive cavities, I believe. There are anomalous mass distributions that were recently discovered on the moon, which we can't make sense of, right? Its hard surface, diamond drill resistant hard surface, doesn't make any sense. It seems the moon is also a lot older than the Earth. Right? There's no end to the mysteries that the moon conjures up for us, including, and this is my favorite one, Dave, a time before the moon. We've discussed this at length. I mean, that's just a nutsy. It's complete and utter craziness to think of a time before there was a moon, right? But there's an oral history which describes an Earth or people that lived before the moon was there. And now, what kind of world would that have been? Well, they're very different to this one, I can tell you that, right? And maybe, just maybe, the arrival of the moon, right, coincided with one of the mass extinction events. Just throwing it out there. Not saying that's what happened, but just throwing it out there. Also, when you look at these mysteries, forget the age of the Earth, forget the age of the moon, focus on the age of humanity as we know it, the current humanity that we all represent. Well, most of us, probably not all of us though. We believe firmly that we are not, if you're biblically versed, we are not the children of Adam. We are not, right? We are what came after the flood, after the cataclysm. That's us. And I'm not Bible bashing you here. It is just one book that remembered the story in some parts. Read the Epic of Atrahasis and look at Gilgamesh, and you will go, oh wow, this is crazy stuff, man. Because the detail and richness in those epics, which are some of the oldest we ever have, or we've ever come across, I should say, are astounding. Right, and you can clearly see that most of the biblical Old Testament is taken, or certainly Genesis, taken directly from the Epic of Atrahasis in a much simplified form. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. So there was a ton of cleansing of the data and a simplification of the detail down to just some few points.
Yeah,
it's like they made a slide deck, Mickey, from it.
You look at, you're right. You're completely correct. It's almost though you've got a really complex. Imagine this: the Count of Monte Cristo, right? Everybody knows the story. The guy got locked up, and he escapes and takes revenge, and etc. It's a big book by Alexandre Dumas, right? Written 300 years ago or so. Same guy that anyway, it doesn't matter. The Three Musketeers, same guy. But then, if you were to read that story, even tell the story in some detail to a child, right, or a person maybe that didn't have all the education that you had,
it'd be a 12-page book with pictures.
Yeah, all of a sudden it would be. The gist would be there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, there was a guy who was in prison for a long time, came out, took revenge. He lived happily ever after. I mean, probably more detail than that, but all the intricate plot details and character development just wouldn't exist. You have it though in the Epic of Atrahasis, right? So we need to look at the age of humanity. Like I said, don't look at the age of the moon and the planets and whatever. How old are we? And I think we, as a species, in various forms, are very, very old, right? We're only scratching the surface. We're finding stuff all the time, Dave, that pushes the timeline back further and further. We're discovering new human ancestors, not human-like, but human ancestors, which we interbred with. There's at least 4 or 5 now we have identified, of which one we have no idea who they are, but they left their genetic mark on us.
That's right.
So let's be very clear what we're talking about here. And I believe very firmly, and this is one of the cornerstones of the hypothesis. And if you want to hear about that, listen to show number 300, I think, or 400 even.
400, yeah.
One of the we are a species with amnesia. We have forgotten most of our history. We simply have. We have, right? And if it was written down, it might have been destroyed. The paper, forget about it, right? I mean, cuneiform has only survived because it's actually in clay, right? And
Baked.
the area, sorry,
Baked,
and yeah, exactly. And the area where it was actually made and baked had a fairly dry climate, so it actually survived, which is fantastic for us. Anything written on a papyrus, not the Dead Sea Scrolls notwithstanding, of course, it has a very small chance of surviving. Millions of volumes were lost in just the burning of the Library of Alexandria. I mean, there's a long. I won't get into the story of the Library of Alexandria. Suffice it to say, we did lose certainly close to 1 million volumes of knowledge there. Other cultures have produced writing. In South America, there's still quite a few codices which we have not been able to decipher. We come across this stuff all the time, but unless you have a key, can't decipher, right? There's this really famous, the name is
wallpaper print otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. The only reason we can read the Egyptian hieroglyphics is because somebody found a key. There was actually... No,
not that one.
Or maybe no. I think you're right. I think it's the Rosetta Stone. Yeah, thank you. Essentially, the same text. It's almost like a tourist map.
That's right. It was in 3 languages.
Yeah, exactly. 3 languages. I think it was ancient Greek, another language, and then also in hieroglyphics.
That's right.
And they were all contemporary languages. And so if you were, there was trade. People were traveling around. Go visit a place, so they could by having that. The Rosetta Stone, that's exactly right, Dave. By having that stone, this and literally it was a stone tablet, they were able to decipher the hieroglyphics. Otherwise, we would be looking at some pretty pictures, no idea what that means.
Stylized insects.
Yeah, but because we had this amazing key to translation, we can now look at it, right? Other languages are completely locked to us and a complete mystery. We just don't know. We just don't know. Imagine all the knowledge that has gone. And then look at the stories that have survived up to this day. About flying machines, about going to the moon, about, dare I say it, contact with extraterrestrial entities, which of course for me is a huge issue because they're anthropomorphic. But space travel, interplanetary, even intersolar travel, potentially, who knows, intergalactic travel. I mean, who knows what kind of tech we used to have. People talk about gateways. People talk about automatically opening doors that are sound activated. Open sesame.
That's
People
right.
talk about replicators or food producers, like in Tischlein deck dich in German. It's like a little table with a cloth. Then every time you say Tischlein deck dich, it means table, please set yourself. It is spread with food.
Wow.
And the 7 Mile boots. Flying on a cloud, flying carpets, flying in general, right? And some of the artifacts on the planet can only be seen from the air. The famous Nazca line, you can only see it from the air. There's no way you can see it from anywhere near the ground. You have to build a fairly large, a platform before you see anything at all.
Well, yeah, and plus the mountainside was sheared off.
Yeah.
To make it in the first place, which is
flat,
traditionally ignored. What about those the millions of holes, Mickey?
Yeah,
as well.
What's the purpose? Who knows? It looks like a really complicated game of Parcheesi. Who knows? I really don't know, right? But we have all these artifacts, Dave, right?
And we have stories of people going into space, being invited to travel in space.
Yes. And they describe how the Earth looks from space, right? And you really have to. And Ezekiel, again, the Bible, right? One of the more famous ones. He never came back, by the way. But suddenly, so he came back, and then the second time he went, he never came back. But he described what the Earth looked like to him, like a bowl of porridge, and the ocean looks like a bowl of water and things like that. And truly enough, that's exactly what it would look like to you. Flying machines are described in every ancient artifact that we have, in every ancient writing, virtually. Every culture has something. They talk about elixirs of immortality, going to the moon, being exiled to the moon, no less, as well, right? Interplanetary wars. Okay, if you look at Bode's law, there should be a planet where the asteroids are. Okay,
That's right.
The asteroid belt, but there isn't. Was there? What scientists say these days, oh, these are just asteroids that never formed into a planet. I want to go the other way. I'm going to say there was a planet which was then smashed into asteroids, right? That's my opinion. But hey, what I know. Mars. We're finding new things of anomalies on Mars, anomalies of Phobos, the anomalies we find everywhere else. I mean, there seem to be artifacts on the moon we can't explain. There are certainly artifacts on Mars we can't explain. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on we just don't know about. I mean, it doesn't end.
Well, Mackie, it doesn't get communicated to us on our level.
No.
I think people know about it.
Oh, yes.
I think there's certain parts of the human society, the very top, high echelon-y, secret-y, component-y kinds of need-to-know basis people who know. I'm sure they know. I'm sure they've got almost, even if it's not just part of the picture, the whole picture.
Yep.
About what's truly there and what's going on and what the moon really is. Maybe they've already been.
Oh, no doubt.
Maybe there's tech well beyond our imagination.
And I think there is. It's really interesting. There's a movie called They Live, and They Live. I mean, if you haven't seen it,
I showed my daughter that today, man.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It is.
She was
fascinating.
Fascinated by it. Fascinated.
Oh, great! Because it is a fascinating thing. It is just astounding because you look at it, you watch it for the first time. But when I watched it for the first time, I thought, oh my God, that's my life. Because this guy he finds a set of glasses that lets him see the world for what it is, right? Let's call it that. And then he tries, even with physical force, to make his new friend, see the same thing. Right? But he doesn't want to, so they fight. And look, is it the finest piece of cinematic art ever made? No. But it is one of my all-time favorite movies, just for the subject matter. But the acting, and again, it's John Carpenter, so there's no happy ending either. So watch it, see it. But essentially, it allows you to see the world. And in that movie, they have a transfer station, and they travel with an extremely advanced light technology to their own planets and to other planets. So there's no spaceship. They themselves are sent, if you will, to their destinations. However, wherever that might be. But there's no spaceship involved.
Like a gateway kind of thing.
So yeah, kind of like it, right? I mean, the visualization is not quite there, but certainly, yeah. So there's tech out there, and we're only scratching it. And we one thing we know, Dave, one thing we know for sure before we get to the articles, is that we don't know anything. Quantum mechanics, right, and relativity don't go together, right? That's one day they might, but if quantum mechanics is at all correct, and every experiment we've ever conducted, be very clear on this, every experiment that we have ever conducted has come out and said that quantum mechanics is valid. So all the crazy theories and all the spooky actions at a distance and all the slit experiments that there are, they're all completely in line with what actually happens. Not just thought experiments, but actual outcomes.
Yes, so Mackie, I see what Mackie's saying here. Mackie's saying that the repeatable experiments that show these weird actions are confirmed to show those weird actions, with still very limited explanation on how it actually happens, because we don't have any clue. No. Mackie, if you designed the entire universe, because I wanted to ask you this question for some time, if you'd created this entire, universe, virtual universe that we all live in, and you're the creator, I wouldn't allow the traditional physics. I want a gap. I would never want them to be able to overlap in any way, because that would allow the people inside to determine what was actually going on. However, our curious ways have got us to the point where we we see something really weird going on and can't explain it. We're so close to the cusp, if this was virtual, to saying it's absolutely a virtual environment. We're so close to the cusp of having to be able to declare it, but we're dying to try and we're killing ourselves to meet the two together, to meet to have the two sciences overlap and be able to have a joining, a unification of these two, of Einstein's universe and the world of the magical. It's very crazy.
Look, it's a great term you used, the world of the magical, because I think that is absolutely the correct term to use. The supernatural, the magical, the thing that we don't understand logically, rationally. We've built ourselves a nice little box of rationality and logic, right?
I feel comfortable in the box.
Yeah, it's so comfortable. I've got cushions here, I've got my little coffee machine.
I have a big screen. I can't watch any sport anymore because there's no sport, but it doesn't matter.
That's okay. Who needs sport? But ultimately, right? Ultimately, you realize that this limited knowledge that we have is actually flawed, and it is flawed in many ways because it doesn't explain the deeper mysteries of existence, right? Completely not. And we need to think differently. We have to come out of our funk here, and it's really important that we allow ourselves to think bigger and outside the accepted parameters of our science and technology. And I know people scoff at it and go, "Oh, you're crazy," and this and that. Well, no, and I will tell you why. Because there are phenomena out there which we simply cannot explain. We can't. Maybe one day we can. Right, but I believe it takes a different way of thinking. It takes a different scientific method to unravel these things, not the traditional one, right? Because something you can't test. But I don't want to digress too far. The point I'm trying to make here is that the moon mysteries is intimately linked with the mystery of our existence and presence on this planet, I believe. And the moon features too prominently everywhere. It has dominance and supremacy over the sun in many cultures, which is completely nonsensical. The sun is the life giver, right? And in the sky, they look the same size. Okay, so if you go by size, they're the same size. And the moon only reflects the sunlight, so it's a much lesser planetary body, if you will, a much lesser body. It's not hot. It's not life-giving. It illuminates the night sometimes. If it's a full moon. But the sun, nobody would dispute the supremacy of the sun. You wouldn't. You simply wouldn't, right? Unless the moon was responsible for a massive cataclysm at some point when it came into existence. Potentially, I'm just spitballing here, guys, right? But a lot of cultures put the moon on top or in front of the sun, being the father of the sun, right? Rather than the sun being the father of the moon, which would make a lot more sense. Imagine the moon came into our orbit at some point in the dim and distant past. Imagine the catastrophes that would have caused.
Absolutely.
I mean, you forget about it, right?
The earthquakes would have been just off the charts.
Oh, completely. It would be a civilization ender. But again, I believe it was brought here deliberately, right? And again, I believe the surface dwellers, us, are like the third world or fourth world country people. You're living on the surface. You're completely inconsequential. The actual stuff happens in the inner earth, right? The civilizations at the bottom of the ocean and in the Earth's crust. I think that's where the actual power brokers are still, however many there might be of them. And we think of us as the cargo culls that are visited by the advanced American pilots in World War II. Yeah, and we don't understand it all. So we see UFOs once in a while. We don't really. There's certainly a UFO cult around it, right? Like we're trying to rebuild them and lure them in and do this and that. And I honestly believe that we are the poor.
That's such a good analogy.
Yeah, we are the poor cousins on the surface. I mean, why would you ever live on the surface of a planet? That's insane. You get sunburn, you get exposed to weather. Who needs that kind of stuff, really, right? What you do is you live on the inside of the planet. That's where you go, right? In the underground caverns and all these wonderful things.
Even you said that the bottom of the ocean is a more stable environment.
Yeah,
completely.
Right. So look, that's again, that's just our opinion, right? Again, something maybe to think about, worth thinking about, But the moon is not all that it appears to be, in my opinion. No way. No way. It is too... It is... From a statistical point of view, the moon shouldn't exist. If you want to apply math to it as a probability function, there should be no such thing as our moon. It just doesn't make sense from a mathematical point of view.
It's like throwing a coin 1,000 times and always getting heads.
100%. 100%.
It's it's off the charts crazy.
Yeah. It's off the all in total single things like the relative sizes. They're off the charts, but in totality, the totality of the moon is completely off the charts, right? So just to be clear on that, so that's why we devoted yet again another show cycle. And last time we spoke about it was show number 26 for our first year, of course, and now in year 9, and in the cusp of year 8 and year 9, we have come back to the moon with significantly updated show notes. Hopefully interesting to most of you. There are a few more things left to do, Dave, unless you wanted to add a few more things on the general nature of the moon.
I thought you might read that story of yours first.
Which ones?
The one that you didn't put in the notes yet.
Okay, yeah, let's go ahead. Trump executive order calls for commercialization of the solar system. Mining the moon. This was published by the Palm Spring Desert Sun on April the 10th this year, 2020. Neil Armstrong captivated the world when he took one giant leap onto the moon's dusty surface in 1969. President Donald Trump, who began his foray into galactic affairs, well, at least certainly solar system affairs.
Space Force.
When he championed the Space Force to fight extraterrestrial wars, is looking for his own moon landing moment. In the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, the White House announced Monday an executive order in which Trump calls for U.S. business interests to mine the moon. Though the order specifies that a return to the moon would allow the country to explore and exploit lunar materials, it insinuates that the scope of this new era of commercialization would apply to the moon, Mars, and other celestial bodies. Lunar development would include a search for minerals as well as water, and this would require partnerships between the U.S. government and private industry. According to the order, one of the major roadblocks holding businesses back from mining the moon is uncertainty regarding the right to recover and use space resources, including extension of the right to commercial recovery and use of lunar resources. Because space is for everybody. There's actually a treaty out there that says that space is for everybody, right? So Trump's executive order attempts to advance the scarce legal framework that governs various nations' claims to space. Several international resolutions, such as the Moon Agreement, have been adopted over the past 50 years, but the administration in its order did not acknowledge the legitimacy of these. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has 180 days to consult with other cabinet-level positions and the head of NASA before reporting back to Trump on progress made in advancing the decision. In 2001, NASA landed the first man-made object on an asteroid, leading to speculation that certain rare minerals could one day be mined from rocks hurtling through space. The mining, oil, and gas industries have turned to increasingly extreme extraction methods such as seabed strip mining and hydraulic fracturing to access mineral deposits on this planet. The announcement included a statement attributed to Trump. So this is the statement I'm quoting. After braving the vast unknown and discovering the new world, our forefathers did not merely sail home, and in some cases never to return. They stayed, they explored, they built, they guided, and through that pioneering spirit, they imagined all of the possibilities that few dare to dream, it says. Back on Earth, the federal government has ignored calls to update the main law governing hard rock mining, minerals such as gold and lead, which has gone largely unchanged since it was signed in 1872. Dave, that is President Trump's plan, which is a fair plan, I think, for the moon and Mars and others. So, it's a commercial venture rather than a scientific exploration.
It's soon going to be the first in best dressed.
Correct.
Right?
But tell us...
Haley's Comet may just get captured and mined, Just think about what that could happen. Yeah, imagine you look up at the moon, in 500,000 years, you look at the moon and it's mostly gone.
And it's always like a sickle, right?
Yeah.
It's always a crescent now. What?
It's full moon. How can you tell? I don't know. That's funny. So the world's first mission to mine mystery Mars moon with Japanese drill probe gets go-ahead. Sean Keach, the digital technology and science editor, wrote this, and this is 21st of February this year, before his lockdown. A Martian moon mining mission, millions of miles from Earth, has been given the go-ahead. The world first plan to see Japan send a probe to mystery moon Phobos to drill for samples before returning to Earth years later. Japan, this is the same story, isn't it? Yep. Mm-hmm. Japan plot to probe Phobos. The pint-sized Phobos is the innermost of Mars' two moons, as we've learnt in last episode of this show. The other being Deimos. So both of the moons were discovered in 1877 and have long tempted space explorers. The irregularly shaped satellite has a diameter of about 14 miles and is named after the Greek god of fear. It orbits 3,700 miles from the Martian surface, but is a staggering 48.3 million miles from Earth. That's the first place I'd go mining, Mackie. It's so far away. Mm-hmm. Okay. Japan Phobos mission, when does it begin? Is a good question. Japan's space agency JAXA has been hoping to probe the space rock for years, and now the mission has been given the all clear to begin. A new H3 rocket will launch the probe September 2024, entering Martian orbit by next summer. The summer after 2024, I suspect. The probe would then study Phobos over 3 years, including a landing to collect rock and sand samples. It would return to Earth with these samples in September 2029. Wow, okay, that's pretty good. What is Phobos and why is Japan drilling it? Japan has already demonstrated its ability to drill into space rocks. Last year, the Hayabusa 2 probe allowed JAXA to collect samples from the Ryugu asteroid. It's also significantly smaller than Phobos at only 0.6 of a mile wide. Phobos has long been a source of mystery and intrigue for astronomers. Its tiny size means gravity on Phobos is just 1,000th of that of Earth's. Surface temperatures on the mysterious space rock peak at around -4, which is about 25 Fahrenheit, on the sunlit side. So it would go to -250 something degrees on the other side. But on the shadowy black side, yep, there you go, -170 Fahrenheit or -112 Celsius. We don't know for sure, but scientists think Phobos is likely a rubble pile held together with a thin crust. Well, that would be the end of that space probe, trust me on that one. And it becomes enveloped in it. And Phobos is getting closer to Mars by about 6.5 feet every 100 years. That's not going to see the end of anything. The last thing that probably pushed it into that orbit was the huge monolith that speared into it, but we'll have to find out more about that later on. The cost of Japan's mission, named MMX, to Phobos is estimated around 46 billion. Is that a year?
Yen.
Oh, okay. That's something else. So at $415 million US, or 321 million pounds. That's around double the cost of Hayabusa probe mission. My goodness, what an extraordinary cost for, I wonder what kind of yield, Mackie.
Well, look, that's really the question. I mean, we have to do these things, I think, in order to find out what's out there. But I'm hoping that we're going to find more, and if we do find more, I'm also hoping that it's going to be disclosed. But again, chances of disclosure are slim to non-existent. And certainly, the monolith is a very strange feature. It makes absolutely no sense, especially considering that there's no tectonic activity whatsoever on Phobos, and it's meant to be like just like a clump of rubble held together by a thin crust. So the existence of this particular monolith really doesn't make much sense. And nothing reminds me of Space Odyssey, Arthur C. Clarke Space Odyssey, so much as that particular monolith. It's fascinating stuff. It really is. We also have an article around the moon's creation, and it is now being questioned by chemistry. The origin of the moon has been challenged, creating a new puzzle as how the moon was formed. This article was new back in 2012 when we first brought you the show. Nothing has changed, though. That's the gist, and then I'll get Dave to share the rest with us. The theory stands that a Mars-sized object hit Earth, causing chunks to spin off and create the moon. A new study determined that theory to be much less likely, as the moon's chemistry is identical to Earth's. If a collision took place, remnants of the colliding body should also be present. And this is, again, it's trying to we have not come to the end of knowledge on the moon. So it's one of the impact theory is very unlikely. A study showing lunar chemistry identical to Earth could mean a review of existing theories. New questions have been raised about how the birth of the moon after new study found samples from Earth and the lunar surface to be virtually identical. The study reported in the journal Nature Geoscience contradicts the theory that the moon formed after the impact of a Mars-sized object named Theia with the early Earth about 4.5 billion years ago. Dave?
It's alive. There's magma on the moon. At the time of both the Earth and Theia were still partially molten, the impact causing Theia's core to sink into the Earth's core, while lighter ejecta and debris were thrown into space, eventually coalescing to form the moon, is the study here. A new study by Junjun Zhang of the University of Chicago and colleagues compared isotopic ratios of titanium in lunar and terrestrial samples. Zhang and colleagues found the ratio of titanium isotopes on both Earth and the moon to be identical to within about 4 parts per million. Because the Mars-size impactor is expected to have been isotopically different, the measurements suggest that the moon is either made entirely of material from Earth or intense mixing occurred on both bodies after impact. Zhang and colleagues say the similarity can't be explained by both bodies forming in the same part of the solar system because meteorite samples show intensive diversity in titanium isotopic ratios. They conclude the isotopes are far more likely to have come from Earth rather than the other planet. Planetary scientist Brad Carter from the University of Southern Queensland says, while it's unlikely to have 2 planets with the same chemical composition, it's not impossible.
That's it. And and there's more, despite what the paper says.
Yeah, that's right. A planet forming very close to Earth, the early Earth, could have similar composition resulting in similar isotopic ratios, says Carter. It's also possible that Theia was essentially made of ice, something from the Kuiper belt in the outer solar system. This would have provided the energy of impact with the ice evaporating away, leaving Earth material to eject into space and form the moon. That's a great explanation. Another option suggested by Zhang and colleagues involved the proto-Earth spinning much faster than previously thought, allowing a greater degree of mixing. However, this is a quote, says Carter, we don't really think Earth had spun rapidly enough for that to happen. And then you have the problem of slowing down the Earth's rotation afterwards. Zhang and colleagues suggest a gravitational resonance effect between the Earth and Moon and Sun may have provided the forces needed to slow the Earth's spin rate, says Carter. Despite the problems, Carter believes the paper makes a good point about the need for revision of the current theory. You mean they point enough holes in it for the conversation to continue. The simple idea of Theia slamming into Earth remains sound, says Carter, but we need to refine current theories that don't explain the incredible similarities of the isotopic ratios between the Earth and Moon. I can explain it. Let me tell you. we have a third or fourth generation sun, meaning that a sun in this region has been here whether it's the third or the fourth time a sun and a solar system has existed in this region, meaning that we wouldn't have iron at all, or even gold for that matter, on our planet at all if this was the first sun. If we were in the universe with a single sun that was only hydrogen, we wouldn't have any material to be able to live. There'd just be gas giants.
Yep.
Right? We have a planet made of rock. Now, rock can be created by microorganisms. That's fine. I get that. But the accretion disk around which the sun was made and started spinning and the planet started forming from, collections of matter, that matter came from somewhere else, another solar system that existed.
All heavy elements are made in the heart of suns.
That's correct.
That's where they're made. Nowhere else.
When a sun explodes in a supernova, a lot of those heavy metals are created at that point in that explosion. So we just happen to be lucky to be here with this amount of rich, heavy elements. I mean, imagine if we were living on a water planet. Good luck with that. We're dolphins swimming around. We have no idea that there's anything other than hydrogen and helium.
But the thing is this: so they only looked at titanium here, right? Titanium isotopes. So it is fair enough. That's the only thing they looked at. What I think happened that they probably used titanium from the Earth to construct the moon. Is my opinion. That's why we have so little titanium on the Earth. There's very little titanium here, and certainly none of the titanium as it exists on the moon. Okay, in the way titanium exists on the moon, we don't have on the Earth. Just to be very clear.
You mean like a large shell you can't drill into?
There you go. Well, processed, really, yeah, absolutely. Whereas some of the moon rocks are much, much older than the Earth, as we've been told, right, and learned. So it's a dichotomy of information which doesn't seem to have a clear. It doesn't have to have a clear pointer. There's no clarity around any of these mysteries, and the only explanation that really makes truly sense, right? And I know this is going to get a lot of hate for us, but if the moon was built, if the moon was an artificial construct, all of the mysteries would evaporate completely, gone. Because they built it that way. Okay, that makes sense. They built it because they understand. Now the engineering skill it would take for that is staggering, obviously.
It's clearly beyond human capability.
Yeah, but we already have speculated around the capabilities of a truly interstellar or even intergalactic civilization. One of the key engineering feats civilization of that nature might undertake is the creation of a Dyson sphere. It's called the Dyson sphere after the engineer that thought it up initially. But essentially, you break up the entire material you have in a solar system, all of it, all the planets, all the moons. You break it up, and you form a shell around the sun. Because right now, we are only using a fraction of the sunlight's energy, a fraction, whatever falls on the Earth, and it's a tiny, tiny amount we use. You can look at all the stuff. I mean, all the energy you have on the planet originated in the sun. That's it. There's nowhere else for the energy to come from.
But because it goes out in 360 degrees, three-dimensionally, all around the sun, it leaves the sun, and we only get a really, really tiny amount of that. If you can capture and harness all of that by building a structure around the sun to extract it, wow.
I know, right?
That's a lot of energy.
Well, it is. And a civilization that could do that would harness all of that energy, and energy would essentially be free and almost limitless.
It's a type 2, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a type 2, exactly. It's a type 2 civilization. And we're nowhere near that, by the way, just in case you're wondering.
No.
But again, it is all a matter of engineering capability and prowess. Let me explain it this way. We were mapping the human genome manually, and we weren't getting anywhere. Right? It would have taken us hundreds of years to do it in the manual process that we had, like people actually doing it by hand, if you will. With the advent of computer systems, advanced computing systems that could do many million calculations a second and evaluate data and such, many million times faster than we could. We have now mapped the entire human genome. We're mapping all the other genomes as well. We're now playing with the genomes because that's what we do. We're just a monkey putting his hand into a hole to see if there's a snake. So, never mind whether or not we should be doing it. But we could only do it because of our advances in computing sciences, right? Because of our technological prowess in the creation of ever more advanced computer systems. The same goes for our engineering feats, right? I mean, building things that we do and engineering. Building skyscrapers almost a kilometer tall, finding materials that have enough tensile strength that they won't collapse under their own weight, right? When we build these higher structures, and eventually we'll build a space elevator. But my point is, it's a learning. Each generation builds on the next. And so, Dave, eventually we will.
Yeah, I was going to add. We think we can make a good car. We make a nice, safe car, for instance, and it's rigid, and we make it out of of the most cost-effective materials, and it's as lightweight as possible. But you give it to AI to create the car body, and it does it in a completely different way that we could never have imagined to have done it, and it becomes hundreds times lighter and more structurally sound. So, like you sort of intimated there, that we've, we're just the dumb monkeys putting our hand in a hole to see if there's a snake there. I think that's really funny because we've now, I think, from that brain utilization component where we were the smartest before we made computers.
Yeah.
And now we've relaxed our intelligence to allow the computer to do it for us. I think that's probably the best way. We now can go back to our arts and our imagination and think of things. But I think ultimately that was always inevitable, that we were going to do that, right? So there's a couple of times in history I think we hit our pinnacle. But certainly from an individual's intelligence, not the nation's intelligence, because I think it's a different thing. Meki, what are some of the interesting moon facts?
Oh, look, we've got a bit of time here. There are lunar months. Our months correspond approximately to the length of time it takes our natural satellite to go through a full cycle of phases. From excavated telesticks, researchers have deduced that people from as early as the Paleolithic, which is the Old Stone Age, a period counted days in relation to the moon's phases. But there are actually 4 different kinds of lunar months. The duration listed here is averages. There's the anomalistic, the length of time it takes the moon to circle the Earth, measured from 1 perigee, which is the closest point in its orbit to Earth, to the next, which is 27 days, 13 hours, 18 minutes, and 37.4 seconds. Then there's the nautical month, with the length of time it takes the moon to pass through one of its nodes, where it crosses the plane of the Earth's orbit and return to it, which is 27 days, 5 hours, 5 minutes, and 35.9 seconds. Then there's the sidereal month, the length of time it takes the moon to circle the Earth, using the stars as a reference point. And this time is 27 days, 7 hours, 43 minutes, and 11.5 seconds. And finally, there's the synodical month, which is the length of time it takes the moon to circle the Earth, using the sun as the reference point. That is the time lapse between 2 successive conjunctions with the sun, going from new moon to new moon, which is, in fact, 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, and 2.7 seconds. It is the synodic month that is the basis of many calendars today and is used to divide the year. And not all of them. Go on.
And because that makes more sense in our rotational axis around the sun, that it should use that method to do it. The others don't take into account our orbit path. So that's why they're shorter. And the 29 days is probably one of the best and most accurate ways, because knowing that we use the Earth as the measurement to go around the sun to calculate a year from being in a fixed position with the star background to returning to that position, given that the precession of the equinox moves that star field behind the sun, but that just complicates things. I think the Mayans were right. So we also see slightly more than half of the moon from Earth. Oddly enough, isn't that extraordinary? Thinking that the Earth, so the moon itself in relation to the Earth doesn't turn, that we actually see slightly more than half of it. Most reference books will note that because the moon rotates only once during each revolution of the Earth, we never see more than half of its total surface. The truth, however, is that we actually get to see more of it over the course of its elliptical orbit, which is about 59%, almost 3/5. The moon's rate of rotation is uniform, but its rate of revolution is not. So we're able to see just around the edge of each limb, that's left-right, from time to time. Put another way, the two motions do not keep perfectly in step, even though they come out together at the end of the month. We call this effect libration of longitude. So the moon's rocks in the east and west direction, allowing us to see farther around in longitude at each edge than we would otherwise could. The remaining 41% can never be seen from our vantage point, and if anyone were on that region of the moon, they would never see the Earth.
Yeah, tidally locked. Again, one of the mysteries. One of the huge, what? So many things have to be just right for only ever the one face of the moon to face here. Okay, again, statistically speaking, it's completely insignificant. It's just nuts. Now, the next point, and then I think we're getting closer toward the end here, but the next point is really the important one I tried to make earlier around the supremacy of the moon over the sun. Why do so many ancient cultures value the moon or put the moon on a higher pedestal than the sun? Because in reality, it would take hundreds of thousands of moons to equal the brightness of the sun. Just on that factor alone, the sun should rule supreme in every possible culture you can think of. The full moon shines with a magnitude of minus 12.7, but the sun is 14 magnitudes brighter at 20 or minus 26.7. The ratio of brightness of the sun versus the moon amounts to a difference of 398,110 to 1. So the sun is 398,000 times brighter than the moon. So that's how many full moons you would need to equal the brightness of the sun. Okay, of course you couldn't fit that many moons in the sky. That's completely crazy. The sky is 360 degrees around, including the half we can't see below the horizon. So there are over 41,200 square degrees in the sky. The moon measures only a half degree across, which gives it an area of only 0.2 of a square degree. So you could fill up the entire sky, including the half that lies below our feet, with 206,000 full moons, and still come up short by 191,000 moons in the effort to match the brightness of the sun. Again, why would the moon then therefore be ever considered to be supreme to the sun? It doesn't make any sense.
What are we at, number 6?
Sure.
We've only got 3 minutes left, so I want to be quick with this. So the Earth seen from the moon always goes through phases. From any spot on the moon, except from the far side, where you cannot see the Earth would always appear to be in the same place in the sky. And I made this point about moonrise on the moon, which is impossible. Sorry, Earthrise. It can't ever happen. It's when you look up, it's always going to be in the same place. I don't think there's any point to mention the rest of that. Keep going. Number 7. Earth to Meki. Number 7.
Sorry, buddy. Yep. Eclipses are reversed when viewing from the moon. Phases aren't the only things that are seen in reverse from the moon. An eclipse of the moon for us is an eclipse of the sun from the moon. In this case, the disk of the Earth appears to block out the sun. If it completely blocks the sun, a narrow ring of light surrounds the dark side of the Earth, our atmosphere backlighted by the sun. The ring appears to have a ruddy hue since it's combined light of all the sunrises and sunsets occurring at that particular moment. That's why during a total lunar eclipse, the moon takes on a ruddy or coppery glow. When a total eclipse of the sun is taking place here on Earth, an observer of the moon can watch over the course of 2 or 3 hours as a small, distinct patch of darkness works its way slowly across the surface of the Earth. It's the moon's dark shadow, called the umbra, that falls on the Earth. But unlike in a lunar eclipse, where the moon can be completely engulfed by the Earth's shadow, the moon's shadow is less than a couple of 100 miles wide when it touches the Earth, appearing only as a dark blotch.
There are rules for how the moon's craters are named. Lunar craters were formed by asteroids and comets that collided with the moon. Roughly 300,000 craters wider than 1 kilometre, or 0.6 of a mile, that are thought to be on the moon's near side alone. They're named for scholars, scientists, artists, and explorers. So the custom of applying personal names to lunar formations began in 1645, and there's been lunar maps made as a result. Today, the IAU continue to decide names for craters on our moon, along with names for astronomical objects.
I think that brings to end our moon show. Hopefully it's been interesting, entertaining, and enlightening. I mean, there's a lot of information here, and all of it you can research for yourselves, by the way. Some of the leaps of faith we've had, some of the deductions we've made, the ours. But a lot of the other stuff you can find out there in the world, and it's really up to you to make up your own mind as to what you think the moon is all about. For me, it is just it's a really strange object, Dave. It doesn't make any sense. If you look at it purely scientifically, the moon doesn't make sense. And I don't care who you are and you know what you believe in. It's a mystery that we have been discouraged from exploring for the last 30 or so years, almost 40 years now. Actually, 40 years. We weren't really allowed to go back, right? I believe.
I believe too. I believe there was an agreement. And I know that the music started.
Yep.
Have yourself the rest of the Great Easter if you believe in that sort of thing. And stay safe and stay in lockdown. Obey the laws. And we'll see you for show 422 next week. Take care, everyone.